"Can you buy me and take me as your slave?" pleaded the alien girl, chained like a dog. The heat of twin desert suns beat down mercilessly on Riker Vance's shoulders as he approached the fortress carved into the red cliffs of Taxis Prime. Sweat trickled down his neck, soaking the collar of his dark grey travel shirt. His boots kicked up dust with each determined step. The weight of his blaster against his thigh, a small comfort in this lawless outpost. "Just get the damn hyperdrive modulator and get out," he muttered to himself, squinting at the fortress entrance, where two hulking guards stood. Watch their reptilian features impassive beneath the glare of the suns. The guards barely acknowledged him as he passed, merely flicking their forked tongues in his direction. The fortress interior offered little relief from the heat, just dimmer lighting and the stench of too many alien species crammed into a poorly ventilated space. Merchants hawked their wares from stalls lining the main corridor. Everything from contraband weapons to exotic foods that still squirmed on their platters. Riker had been directed to seek out Krago, a notorious merchant known for his extensive inventory of starship parts and other less savory merchandise. He found the alien shop tucked away in a corner of the marketplace, marked by a faded holographic sign displaying various mechanical components. Human. Kragoth greeted him without warmth. The merchant's bulbous eyes protruded from a face that resembled a hairless, wrinkled cat. 4 arms gestured in different directions simultaneously. "What brings you to my humble establishment? Need a Mark 7 hyperdrive modulator? My ship won't break atmosphere without one." "Ah, expensive taste." Kragoth's mouth split into what might have been a smile, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. "I have one. Perhaps the only one on this miserable rock, but it will cost you." "Name your price," Riker said, already reaching for his credit chip. 20,000 credits, Riker swore under his breath. "Highway robbery. Supply and demand human. Take it or leave it." As they haggled, Riker's attention was drawn to movement in the shadowy back corner of the shop. There, chained to the wall by a thick metal collar, was a small humanoid figure. A girl, he realized with a jolt of disgust. Her skin was a pale lavender hue, dirty and marked with scratches. Long, silvery white hair hung in tangles around her thin shoulders. She wore nothing but a tattered ochre tunic that barely covered her small frame. When she looked up, Riker felt something twist in his gut. Her eyes were large and dark green, filled with tears and a desperation that transcended language barriers. She couldn't have been more than the equivalent of a human teenager. "What about that?" Riker nodded toward the girl, trying to keep his voice casual despite the rage building inside him. Kragoth glanced dismissively over his shoulder. "Ah, the Allion captured her from a refugee ship. Useless as a worker, too weak, but some collectors pay well for exotic specimens." The girl's eyes locked with Riker's. Her lips trembled as she whispered in halting, "Standard! Can you buy me and take me as your slave, please?" The naked hope in her voice hit Riker like a physical blow. He'd seen plenty of ugly things in his travels across the galaxy, but something about this, about her, broke through his carefully cultivated indifference. "How much?" he heard himself asking. Kragoth's eyes gleamed with sudden interest. "For the girl, 15,000. A bargain, really?" Lions are rare since their homeworld was destroyed. Riker had 20,000 credits to his name. Exactly what he needed for the modulator. Without it, his ship was grounded. Without his ship, he was stranded on this hellhole of a planet. The girl's eyes never left his face. "I'll take her instead of the part," Riker said, the words coming out before he could reconsider. "Both would be 25,000, Kragoth countered smoothly. "I don't have that much." 15 for the girl, that's my offer." After more haggling, they settled at 18,000. Nearly everything Riker had. As Kragoth counted the credits, Riker approached the girl, who shrank back against the wall. I won't hurt you," he said quietly, reaching for the compact hatchet at his belt. With a swift, controlled motion, he brought it down on the chain, connecting her collar to the wall. The high-density alloy blades sliced through the metal with a satisfying clang. The girl stared at him in disbelief as he helped her to her feet. She was light, too light, and trembled like a leaf in his grip. "What's your name?" he asked, "Lissa," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm Riker, and I didn't buy you as a slave. I bought your freedom, understand?" Before she could respond, Craig Goth slithered back to them. "Transaction complete. She's yours to do with as you please." His eyes narrowed. "Though now you seem to be without funds for your modulator." "How unfortunate. I'll figure something out," Riker growled. Craig Goth's lipless mouth curved upward. "Perhaps I could offer a solution. I have a delivery that needs making to Scorpius Station. Completed this task, and the modulator is yours." "What kind of delivery?" "Nothing that would trouble a man of your flexible morality. A simple package, valuable to the recipient." Riker knew he was being manipulated, but with no credits and a broken ship, his options were limited. "Fine, I'll do it." As they left the shop, Lissa stumbling beside him, still weak from captivity, Riker wondered what the hell he'd gotten himself into. The weight of the package in his pocket felt heavier than it should have, and the girl, Lissa, watched him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope that made his chest ache. One thing was certain. He was now broke, stranded, and responsible for a traumatized alien girl. All because he couldn't walk away from those pleading green eyes. "Fuck me," he muttered under his breath as they stepped back into the harsh sunlight of Trax's Prime. The package felt unnaturally heavy in Riker's pocket as he guided Lissa through the crowded marketplace. Her small hand clutched his forearm, here he's darting nervously at every loud noise or sudden movement. The collar still encircled her neck. He'd need proper tools to remove it without hurting her. "Are you hungry?" he asked, noticing how she swayed slightly with each step. Lissa nodded timidly. "I haven't eaten and I don't remember." Riker's jaw tightened. With only 2,000 credits left, he needed to be frugal. But the girl clearly needed nourishment. He steered them toward a food stall selling what appeared to be skewered meat and vegetables. "2," he told Thevender, handing over precious credits. As Louis Thera devoured her food with desperate intensity, Riker scanned their surroundings. Something about Kregoff's simple package didn't sit right. He checked it discreetly after leaving the shop, a small data crystal-sealed Ina protective case. Nothing remarkable except for the military-grade encryption markers visible on its surface. "Shit," he muttered. Military intelligence was a death sentence if caught with it. No wonder cargo had been so eager to pass it off. "Is something wrong?" Lissisked, her voice stronger now that she'd food in her stomach. "Nothing you need to worry about," he assured her, though his mind raced with their limited options. A commotion near the entrance to the marketplace drew his attention. 3 armored figures. Local security forces were questioning merchants, showing holographic images to each. One of the images looked suspiciously like Riker. "Time to go," he said, taking Lissa's arm and guiding her deeper into the fortress's maze-like corridors. They ducked into a dimly lit tavern, seeking temporary refuge. The establishment reek of alien liquor and unwashed bodies. Riker chose a shadowy corner booth, positioning himself to watch the door while keeping Lissa partially hidden behind him. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Seems like our friend Krath didn't mention a few details about this delivery job," Riker replied grimly. A server approached, a multi-limbed creature with translucent skin, revealing disturbing internal organs. "Drinks?" it gurgled. "Water for both," Archer said, not wanting to dull his senses with alcohol. As the server shuffled away, Riker felt eyes on them. At the bar, a tall, slender figure in a hooded cloak watched them intently. When their gazes met, the figure stood and approached their table with fluid grace. "Mind if I join you?" The voice was melodic, unmistakably feminine, with an accent Riker couldn't place. Before he could refuse, she slid into the booth opposite them, lowering her hood to reveal a face that made Riker's breath catch. Her skin was a rich bronze, seeming to glow even in the tavern's poor lighting. High cheekbones framed almond-shaped eyes of deep amber. Lustrous black hair cascaded down her shoulders, adorned with small metallic beads that clinked softly when she moved. Her outfit, a form-fitting jumpsuit of some iridescent material, accentuated curves that would make a saint question his vows. Riker forced his eyes back to her face, aware of the heat rising in his cheeks. "I don't recall inviting company," he said, hand discreetly moving closer to his blaster. The woman smiled, revealing perfect teeth with slightly elongated canines. You didn't, but when I saw an alien child in this cesspit, I knew intervention was necessary. She turned to Larissa, her expression softening. Yamnarake. I knew your people, little one. Lissa's eyes widened. You knew Alicians? I was a cultural liaison before the destruction. I helped relocate survivors. Na's gaze returned to Aka, hardening slightly, which makes me curious about how an Alayan child ended up with a human mercenary in a place like this. I'm not a mercenary, Riker corrected, and I didn't capture her. Freed her. Nara's eyebrow arched skeptically. The collar suggests otherwise. He saved me. Lys interjected, her voice surprisingly firm. From Kraoth. He spent all his money. Something in Na's expression shifted. She studied Riker with new interest, her amber eyes seeming to peer into his soul. He found himself unable to look away, drawn into their depths like a man hypnotized. Interesting, she murmured. Most humans wouldn't sacrifice their own interest for an alien child. I'm not most humans, Riker replied, uncomfortably aware of how her gaze made his pulse quicken. Clearly a smile played at the corners of her full lips. And now you're in trouble. Those security forces aren't local. They're hegemony intelligence. Whatever you're carrying has them very interested, Riker tensed. How do you know what I'm carrying? I don't. But I know Kragoth's patterns. He uses unwitting couriers to transport sensitive information, then alerts authorities for the reward while keeping his hands clean. She leaned forward, her scent something like cinnamon and exotic flowers washing over him. You need help, human. I can provide it. At what cost? Riker asked, fighting the distraction of her proximity. Let's discuss that somewhere more private. Her eyes flicked meaningfully toward the tavern entrance where the security forces had just appeared. Riker made a split-second decision. Lead the way. Nara stood gracefully, dropping credits on the table. Follow me and try not to look so obviously human. As they slipped out of back entrance, Riker couldn't help noticing how her jumpsuit hugged her curves with each movement. Despite their precarious situation, he found himself wondering about the woman's motives and trying to ignore the attraction simmering between them. Lyssa's small hand found his again, grounding him in reality. Whatever happened next, he had responsibilities now to the girl, to himself, and possibly to this mysterious, captivating woman who offered help when they needed it most. Na led them through a labyrinth of narrow passages that twisted deep into the fortress's lower levels. The walls transitioned from the polished stone of the public areas to rough hue, rock illuminated only by occasional bioluminescent strips that cast an eerie blue glow across their path. Not much further, Nara whispered, her hand occasionally brushing against Riker's arm as she guided them through particularly dark sections. Each casual touch sent an electric current through his body, a distraction he couldn't afford with hegemony forces on their tail. La trudged beside him, her initial burst of energy from the meal fading fast. Can you carry her? Na asked, noticing the girl's fatigue. Without hesitation, Riker scooped Lyssa into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, another reminder of her mistreatment. She nestled against his chest, her eyes drooping with exhaustion. You're good with her, Na observed, her amber eyes softening as she watched them. Just doing what anyone would do, Riker replied. No, Na said firmly. No Tanyon, especially not with the risks you've taken. They arrived at what appeared to be a dead end. Nara pressed her palm against a seemingly random section of wall. A hidden scanner hummed, reading her biometrics, and a doorway materialized as stone panels slid apart. Welcome to my humble abode, she said, ushering them inside. The contrast between the rough exterior and the interior was striking. The spacious chamber was comfortably furnished, with a blend of practical and luxurious items. One area contained advanced communications equipment and weapon racks. Another featured plush seating around a low table. A partition separated what appeared to be sleeping quarters. You can put her there. Nari indicated a small alcove with a comfortable-looking bed. Riker gently laid Lyssa down. She was already asleep, her breathing deep and regular. He carefully arranged a blanket over her small form before rejoining Nara. Nice setup for a cultural liaison, he remarked dryly. Nara's lips quirked into half-smile as she poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "I may have understated my credentials." She handed him a glass. "I'm actually an operative for the Galactic Coalition." "The Coalition?" Riker accepted the drink but didn't sip it. "I thought they were just a myth. A bedtime story to scare the hegemony. We prefer to keep it that way." She took a seat on a low couch, patting the space beside her. "The hegemony's expansion has gone unchecked for too long. They've destroyed dozens of civilizations, including Elysia." Riker sat beside her, maintaining a cautious distance that somehow still felt intimate in the room's warm lighting. "And what does this have to do with me and my package? The data crystal you're carrying contains evidence of hegemony war crimes, specifically proof that they engineered the natural disaster that destroyed Elysia." Her eyes flashed with controlled danger. "Gurgoth stole it from a coalition courier, then set you up to take the fall while he collected bounties from both sides." "Bastard," Riker muttered, finally taking a sip of his drink. It burned pleasantly down his throat, warming him from the inside. Indeed, Nar's gaze lingered on his lips as he drank. "The question is, what do we do now?" The way she said we sent another jolt through him. Riker set his glass down, suddenly aware of how close they'd moved toward each other. "I need to get that hyperdrive modulator and get Lyssa somewhere safe," he said, trying to focus on practicalities rather than the intoxicating scent of Nar's skin. "I can help with both," she replied, her voice dropping to a husky whisper. "But first, let's take care of that collar." She retrieved a small tool from a nearby cabinet and moved to sit behind him, on the couch. Their thighs pressed together, she leaned over to examine Lyssa's collar. "The lock mechanism is standard hegemony design," she explained, her breath warm against his ear. "I can disable it without waking her." Riker watched Nara's deft fingers work the tool into the collar's locking mechanism. Her concentration was absolute. Her lower lip caught between her teeth in a way that made his mouth go dry. With the soft click, the collar fell away from Lyssa's neck, revealing a band of bruised lavender skin beneath. "Poor thing," Nara murmured, gently stroking Lyssa's hair. "No child should suffer like this." The tenderness in her gesture touched something in her care. "Thank you," he said simply. When she turned to face him, their faces were inches apart. "You're not what I expected, human." "What did you expect?" "Your species has a reputation for self-interest, for conquest." Her fingers tentatively touched his jaw, exploring the texture of his stubble with fascination. "Yet you spent everything to save a child not of your kind. Maybe you've been listening to the wrong stories about humans," Riker suggested, his voice rougher than intended. "Perhaps I have." Her amber eyes searched his question in their depths. Riker answered by closing the distance between them, his lips finding hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something more urgent. Her mouth was sweet from Thelicore, her skin impossibly soft beneath his calloused hands. They broke apart, both breathing heavily. No's eyes had darkened, the pupils expanded until only a thin ring of amber remained. "This is unexpected," she whispered, though her body language suggested otherwise. "Good unexpected or bad unexpected?" Riker skied his thumb, tracing the curve of her lower lip. "Definitely good." She glanced toward the sleeping Lyssa, then back to him with a meaningful look. "But perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private." She stood, taking his hand and leading him toward the partitioned sleeping area. As the privacy screen slid shut behind them, Riker knew he was crossing a threshold in more ways than one. Whatever dangers awaited them tomorrow, tonight offered a different kind of adventure, one that promised to bridge the gap between their worlds in the most primal universal language of all. Rikira woke to the gentle pressure of Na's body against his side, her bronze skin glowing in the dim light of the sleeping quarters. For a moment, he allowed himself to savor the sensation. The warmth of her, the exotic spice scent of her hair, the peaceful rhythm of her breathing. Last night had been extraordinary. Their bodies had communicated across the barriers of species in ways that transcended language. A soft chime from the main room broke the spell. Nara stirred, her amber eyes opening to meet his. "Someone's at the outer door," she murmured. Pressing a quick kiss to his shoulder before sliding from the bed, She dressed efficiently, her movements graceful, even in haste. Riker followed suit, strapping his blaster to his thighs. Nar checked a small monitor beside the bed. "It's Trivak," she said, her expression unreadable. "My coalition contact. You weren't expecting him." "Not for another 2 cycles," she frowned. "Stay here until I verify it's safe." Riker nodded, but kept his hand near his weapon. As Nar slipped through the privacy screen, he could hear the murmur of voices. Nara's melodic tones contrasted with a deeper, growly voice. Something about the cadence of the newcomer's speech pattern triggered a warning in Arka's mind. He'd spent enough time in the shadier parts of the galaxy to recognize the subtle rhythms of deception. He peered through a gap in the screen. A tall reptilian alien with mottled green skin stood in the center of the room. Gesturing emphatically, Ash spoke with N. Trevak wore the insignia of a hegemony merchant guild on his elaborate vest. A reasonable cover for a spy, but something in his manner seemed off. A small movement caught Riker's eye. Lissa was awake, sitting up in her alcove, watching the newcomer with wide, frightened eyes. But there was something else in her expression, a strange intensity, as if she were listening to something beyond the audible conversation. Suddenly, Lissa looked directly at Riker and shook her head vehemently, pointing at Trivak with unmistakable warning. Trusting the girl's instinct, Riker stepped out from behind the screen, his hand casually resting on his blaster. "Morning," he said cheerfully. "Hope I'm not interrupting." Trevak's reptilian eyes narrowed, vertical pupils contracting to thin slits. "The human," he hissed, "and you didn't mention company." "Recent development," she replied smoothly. But Riker noticed how she subtly shifted her stance, placing herself at an angle that would allow her to reach the weapon rack if needed. "I've brought urgent news," Tabak continued, his gaze flicking between them. "The hegemony knows the data crystal is here. They've deployed a full tactical team to secure this sector. How convenient that you arrived just in time to warn us," Riker remarked, maintaining his casual demeanor while studying the alien's body language. Trebak's throat pouch inflated slightly, a sign of agitation in his species. "What are you implying, human?" "He's lying." Lissa's small voice cut through the tension. She had slipped from her bed and now stood at the edge of her alcove. "I can feel it. He's wrong inside." Trivak's hand moved toward his waist, but Riker was faster. His blaster hummed to life, aimed squarely at the reptilian's chest. "Easy now," Riker warned. "Let's all stay friendly." "The child is confused," Trevak said, his voice suddenly silky. "Trauma can cause delusions. Elianians are empathic," Nar said quietly, her eyes never leaving Trevak. "It's why the hegemony feared them. They can sense deception." She moved closer to Lissa protectively. "What else do you feel, little one?" Lissa's face scrunched in concentration. "He's waiting for something. There are others nearby." The revelation hung in the air for a heartbeat before chaos erupted. Tvak lunged for a concealed weapon, but Riker's shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him backward. Simultaneously, an alarm blared from Nar's security system. "Perimeter breach!" she shouted, diving for the weapon rack and tossing Arker a second blaster. "They're coming through the maintenance tunnels." Riker grabbed Lissa, pulling her behind the solid stone counter of the kitchenette as blaster fire erupted from a previously hidden access panel in the wall. They rolled behind overturned table, returning fire with deadly precision. "There's another way out," she called over the den behind the storage unit. "Emergency tunnel." Travak had recovered, firing wildly as he backed toward the main door. "The hegemony will reward me well for the crystal and the human," Hess snarled. "Why the human?" Nara demanded, ducking as a shot sizzled past her head. "Humans are becoming problematic," Trevik spat. "This one's compassion for the slave girl proves it. They don't respect the natural order. The hegemony wants examples made." Wrecker felt a cold fury building inside him. "Natural order? You enslave children and call it order?" "Lesser species serve greater ones," Trebak replied with contemptuous certainty. "It is the way of the universe, not my universe," Riker growled, squeezing off 3 precise shots that forced Trevak to retreat further. Amid the firefight, Lissa tugged urgently at Riker's sleeve. "I can help," she whispered. Aliens can do more than feel emotions. What do you mean? Rika sked, shielding her as debris rained down from a near miss. We can push feelings, make them stronger. Her green eyes gleamed with determination. If they're afraid, I can make them terrified. Nara had worked her way closer to them, her jumpsuit now sporting a scorch mark along one sleeve. Empathic projection, she confirmed. It's why the hegemony destroyed Elysia. They feared a species that could manipulate emotions. Can you do it safely? Riker asked Larissa, concern evident in his voice. The girl nodded. Just keep them busy for a moment. Riker and N exchanged a look of understanding. Their night together, having forged a connection that now translated into seamless coordination. They laid down covering fire, creating a distraction as Lyssa closed her eyes in concentration. The effect was immediate and startling. The hegemony soldiers began firing erratically, some dropping their weapons entirely as panic overwhelmed them. Trevik himself let out a high-pitched keen of terror before fleeing through the main door. Now Nara shouted, leading them toward the hidden exit as their attackers scattered in disarray. As they raced through the narrow escape tunnel, Riker carried Annex-hoisted Lyssa, while Nara secured their path ahead. The girl's small body trembled with fatigue, but her eyes shone as with fierce pride. You did good, kid, Riker told her, his admiration genuine. I never got to learn properly, she confessed. My parents were going to teach me when I was older, but then, well, you're a natural, he assured her, exchanging a warm glance with Nara that carried the weight of their shared night in the promise of more if they survived. The escape tunnel narrowed as it descended, forcing them to proceed in single file. Nar led the way, her lithe form navigating the darkness with practiced ease. Riker followed, carrying an exhausted Lyssa who had fallen into a fitful sleep after her empathic exertion. Where does this lead? Riker whispered, ducking to avoid a low-hanging pipe. Lower markets, Nar replied softly. The less regulated sections of the fortress. It's dangerous, but the hegemony won't expect us to head deeper rather than toward the spaceport. The tunnel eventually opened into a maintenance shaft. Nora paused at the exit, checking a small scanner on her wrist. Clear for now, but we need to move quickly. The Admiral's arrival has doubled security everywhere, Admiral Riker asked, shifting Lyssa's weight in his arms. Nar's expression darkened. Admiral Drelock. He's the hegemony's most ruthless enforcer, responsible for the destruction of 3 civilizations that resisted their rule, including Elysia, and he's here for a data crystal. Nar met his eyes in the dim light. He's here for you. Me? I'm nobody. That's not how the hegemony sees it. She touched his arm, her fingers lingering. Human Sare becoming a problem for them. Your species refuses to accept the natural hierarchy they've established. Humans keep doing what you did with Lyssa, showing compassion across species lines, treating lesser beings as equals. That threatens them more than you know. Her amber eyes gleamed with admiration. Humanity's refusal to accept their place in the pecking order is spreading. Other species are starting to question why they should submit when humans don't. A distant clanging sound interrupted them. Nara pressed a finger to her lips, handled them through the exit into a cramped, dimly lit corridor that opened onto a chaotic marketplace. Unlike the more regulated upper levels, this was the fortress's underbelly, a warren of makeshift stalls, selling everything from questionable food to clearly stolen technology. The clientele was a mere assortment of species, many bearing the marks of those who lived on society's fringes. Keep your head down, Nara murmured. There are bounty hunters everywhere. They were through the crowd, Riker's human appearance drawing curious glances. Lyssa stirred in his arms, her green eyes fluttering open. I can walk now, she insisted, though her small body still trembled with exhaustion. Urker sat her down reluctantly, but kept a protective hand on her shoulder. Stay close. Nar led them toward a stall, selling what appeared to be mechanical parts. The proprietor, a spindly alien with 4 arms and milky pupil's eyes, recognized her immediately. Narke, he chittered. Dangerous times to show your face. Hello, Plex, she replied smoothly. We need transport to the south docking bay. Impossible. Plex's antenna twitched nervously. The human is too recognizable. There are hollows of his face at every checkpoint. Riker felt Akil. How high is the bounty? 50,000 credits, Plex answered. Dead or alive, though alive pays more. We need a disguise, Nar decided, scanning the marketplace. And weapons, Riker added. Plex leaned forward conspiratorially. We might help for the right price. We're short on credits at the moment, Nar admitted. The alien's gaze shifted to the data crystal visible in Riker's pocket. That would suffice. Not an option, Riker said firmly. Plex shrugged his multiple shoulders. Then perhaps the little one. Lions fetch a high price, even damaged ones. Riker's hand moved to his blaster, but Lissa stepped forward before he could respond. I am not merchandise, she said with surprising strength. And neither is the crystal, but we can offer something better. What could be better? Plex scoffed. Admiral Drelock, Lisha stated, we're going to capture him. Plex's laughter died when he realized she was serious. Impossible. Not with your help, Nar interjected, catching on to Lissa's bold gambit. Theirward, for bringing down Drelock would make you a legend in the underground. The coalition would ensure you're well compensated. The alien's antennae quivered with interest. What would you need? As Nar negotiated, Riker pulled Lissa aside. That was quite a bluff, kid. Who says I'm bluffing? Her green eyes held a determination that belied a small stature. He destroyed my world, my family. Riker knelt to her level. Revenge isn't worth your life. It's not revenge, as she corrected him. It's justice and prevention. How many more worlds will he destroy? Her wisdom struck him as profoundly unchild, a reminder of all she'd endured. Before he could respond, Nar rejoined them. It's arranged. Plex will provide disguises and a secure route to the South Bay, where my ship is docked. In exchange, we'll feed him information on Drelock's movements. Your ship. Riker raised an eyebrow. Did you think I came to this hellhole on public transport? She smiled, the expression transforming her already beautiful face into something that made his heart stutter. It's small but fast, and it has a weapon system that might surprise you. As they followed Plex through a hidden door behind a stall, Riker found himself marveling at how quickly his life had changed. 2 days ago, he'd been a lone spacer with a broken ship. Now he was a high-value hegemony target, traveling with a traumatized, empathic child and a stunningly gorgeous spy with whom he'd shared the most intense night of his life. In a quiet moment, as Plex rummaged through disguise options, Nara pressed close to him, her body fitting perfectly against his side. Having second thoughts, she whispered, about you? Never. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, savoring the silky texture between his fingers. About taking on an admiral with the 3 Ophis and whatever Plex provides. Maybe a few. Her lips curved into a mischievous smile. Last night, you showed me that humans have unexpected talents. Perhaps it's time to show the hegemony as well. The heat in her gaze promised more than just strategic alliance, and Riker found himself hoping they'd live long enough to explore those promises further. This is a terrible plan, Riker muttered, adjusting the ill-fitting hegemony maintenance uniform Plex had provided. The dull grey coveralls hung loosely on his frame, intentionally sized up to help conceal his human features. It's our only plan, Nar countered, her bronze skin now dulled by a layer of cosmetic pigment that gave her the ashen appearance of a common labor-caste Tavakian. Her lustrous black hair was hidden beneath a utility cap, though nothing could fully disguise the graceful way she moved. Lissa had been the easiest to disguise. Dressed as a maintenance drone with a hood that shadowed her face, she simply needed to stay quiet and follow along. The small toolkit she carried contained not tools, but the data crystal and a compact disruptor Plex had thrown in a gesture of goodwill. Remember, Lara instructed as they approached the service entrance to the fortress's central command sector. Maintenance crews are invisible to Thelite. Keep your head down, avoid eye contact, and let me do any talking. The security checkpoint was manned by 2 bored-looking hegemony soldiers. Nara presented the forge work orders Plex had provided, her demeanor perfectly capturing the weary resignation of a low-caste worker. The guards barely glanced at the documents before waving them through. That was too easy, Riker whispered once they were safely past. The hegemony's greatest weakness is their arrogance, Nar replied. They can't imagine anyone would dare infiltrate their command center, especially not lesser beings. They followed their maintenance corridors, passing other service workers who paid them little attention. Occasionally, uniformed hegemony officers would stride past, not even acknowledging their existence. The invisibility of their disguise was both useful and infuriating to Arca, a glimpse into the daily reality of those the hegemony deemed inferior. According to Plex's intelligence, Admiral Draylock had established a temporary command post in the fortress's central security hub. Their plan was simple: access the adjacent maintenance shaft plant listening devices, gather intelligence on Draylock's movements, then escape to Nar's ship and transmit the data to the Coalition. As they neared their destination, a commotion ahead made them pause. Two hegemony guards dragged a struggling figure down the corridor. A human man, battered and bloody, but still defiant. "Keep moving," one guard snarled, striking the prisoner with an electrified baton. "Admiral Draylock doesn't like to be kept waiting." The human prisoner spat blood onto the polished floor. "Go to hell, you overgrown lizard." Riker tensed, every instinct screaming at him to intervene. Nar's hand found his, squeezing and warning. "We can't," she whispered. "Not yet. I can't just watch them torture another human," Riker hissed back. "If we blow our cover now, we help no one," she reasoned, though her eyes reflected his moral struggle. They pressed themselves against the wall, pretending to inspect a ventilation panel as the guards and prisoner passed. The human's eyes briefly met Riker's, a flash of recognition human to human, before he was dragged around the corner. "Damn it," Arca muttered. "Who is he?" "Likely another species traitor," Nar replied grimly. "The hegemony has been making examples of humans who help other species or refuse to acknowledge their proper place." Lissa tugged at Riker's sleeve. "I can feel him," she whispered. "He's scared, but determined like you." The comparison hit Riker hard. How many other humans out there were making the same choices he had, refusing to accept the hegemon's twisted hierarchy, helping those they deemed lesser beings. "Change of plans," he decided. "We're going after him." "Riker," Nar began. "You said the Admiral wants me as an example," interrupted. "Let's use that. You and Lissa plant the devices as planned. I'll create a distraction by letting myself get caught." "That's suicide," Nor objected, her disguised features unable to hide her concern. "Not if you're there to break me out," he countered with a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Besides, they want me alive. And now they'll have two humans to deal with." Nar stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her amber eyes. Then unexpectedly, she pulled him into a shadowed alcove, pressed her body against his, and kissed him with an intensity that left him breathless. "That," she murmured against his lips, "is why the hegemony fears humans. You're impossibly infuriatingly noble." "Is that a compliment?" he asked, still dazed from the kiss. "The highest?" Her fingers traced his jawline with tender precision. "My people have a saying. The universe bends toward those who refuse to bend. Humans seem to embody that principle." Lissa cleared her throat pointedly. "If you two are done, we have a rescue to plan." Riker chuckled despite the gravity of their situation. "The kid's right. What's the play?" They quickly formulated a new strategy. Nar and Lissa would proceed with planting the surveillance devices, while Riker deliberately exposed himself near the security hub. Once captured, he'd be taken to the same holding area as the other human prisoner. Meanwhile, Nar would use the gathered intelligence to orchestrate their escape. 2 hours, Nara said firmly. "Give us 2 hours before you make your move." "Yes, ma'am," Arca replied with a mock salute that earned him a playful swat. "Be careful," she added, her playfulness giving way to genuine concern. "I've grown rather fond of you, human." "Likewise," he replied softly. "Take care of Lissa." "I will," Nara hesitated, then added, "when this is over, when we're safely away." "Yes," Riker prompted, enjoying the rare sight of the confident spy at a loss forwards. "We should discuss the future," she finished. "Our future." The implication sent a warm current through Riker's body. "I'd like that." Lissa rolled her eyes with the exasperated air of a child watching adults behave foolishly. "If you survive," she reminded them pragmatically. Always the optimist, Riker teased, ruffling her silver hair. They parted at the next junction, Nar and Lissa continuing toward the maintenance shaft, while Riker headed in the direction the guards had taken the prisoner. As he walked away, he found himself thinking not of the danger ahead, but of Nar's words about the future. Their future, a human, a coalition spy, and an alien child. An unlikely family forged in the crucible of adversity. The thought gave him strength as he approached the security hub, ready to surrender himself to the enemy in hopes of saving not just another human, but perhaps striking a blow for all those the hegemony hadn't loved and oppressed. It was time to show Admiral Drelock exactly why humans were becoming such a problem for the hegemony. Admiral Drelock was exactly as Riker had imagined. Tall, imposing, with scale-like skin, the color of burnished copper, and cold reptilian eyes that regarded humans as one might view an interesting insect before crushing it. His uniform gleamed with metals and insignia of conquered worlds. So Drelock's voice was unexpectedly melodious, almost pleasant, which somehow made it more chilling. The human who values alien trash above his own interests. Fascinating specimen. Riker stood defiantly despite the restraints binding his wrists in the guards flanking him. Nearby, the other human prisoner who had introduced himself as Jonathan Montgomery, a traitor from the Terran frontier, watched with wary interest. "I'm surprised you came all this way for little old me," Riker replied, forcing casualness into his tone. "Don't you have civilizations to destroy, Admiral?" Drelock's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. "Your species' penchant for insolence is remarkable, but that's precisely why I'm here." He circled Riker slowly. "Humans are becoming problematic because we don't buy into your natural order, because you inspire others to resist." Drelock stopped directly before him. "One human shows compassion to a slave, another smuggles refugees, another teaches lesser species to read. Small acts insignificant alone, but together he made a gesture like scattering dust. The foundation of our order crumbles." Jonathan spoke up from his restraints. "Sounds like you're afraid of us." Drelock lashed once, the only sign that the comment had struck a nerve. "Fear is irrelevant. The hierarchy must be maintained, which is why you two will serve as examples in a public execution tomorrow. The fortress inhabitants will witness the price of defying natural order." As if on cue, the door slid open and a junior officer entered. "Admiral, we've detected unauthorized access to the surveillance system." Drelock's eyes narrowed. "Find the source and double the guard on these prisoners." After the Admiral swept out, Riker exchanged glances with Jonathan. "Friends of yours?" the traitor asked quietly. "Something like that," Riker replied, hoping Nar and Lissa had gotten the intelligence they needed and that they'd stay far away from this heavily guarded cell. Nara worked feverishly at the maintenance terminal, her fingers flying across the interface as she downloaded the surveillance data. Beside her, Lissa kept watch, her small face tense with concentration. "Someone's coming," the girl whispered suddenly. "Two guards. They feel suspicious." Nara quickly disconnected from the terminal. "Time to move. We've got what we need." They slipped into a service conduit moments before two hegemony soldiers rounded the corner. Through a ventilation grate, Nara could see them examining the terminal she just accessed. "They know," she murmured. "We need to accelerate the timeline." The intelligence they'd gathered was damning. Not just evidence of Alicia's destruction, but detailed plans for similar operations against 3 other worlds that had shown signs of human-inspired resistance. Most crucially, they discovered the location where Riker and the other human were being held, and the schedule for tomorrow's public execution. "We can't wait until morning," Nar decided. "We move tonight." Lissa's green eyes were solemn. "I can help with my abilities." Nara hesitated. "It could be dangerous for you, projecting emotions at that scale." "I want to help Riker," Lissa said firmly. "He saved me when no one else would," and her voice softened. "You love him, don't you?" The directness of the question caught Nara off guard. "I care for him deeply. That's love where I come from," Lissa replied, with a wisdom beyond her years. "And love is the strongest emotion." If we channel that instead of fear or anger, I can do more without hurting myself. Nara studied the child's determined face and realized that in just days, Lissa had transformed from a broken slave into someone with purpose and courage. A transformation catalyzed by one human's compassion. All right, she agreed, but we do this my way. The cell was cold and sterile, designed to remind prisoners of their insignificance. Riker had been working at his restraints for hours with nothing to show but bloody wrists when the light suddenly flickered and died. In the darkness, he heard the soft hiss of the door sliding open. Right on time, he whispered into the blackness. "Did you doubt me?" Nar's voice came back warm with affection, despite the tension of the moment. Quick hands released his restraints, then Jonathan's. As emergency lighting bathed the cell in a dim red glow, Riker saw Nara in her maintenance disguise. Lissa at her side. "Nice outfit," he quipped, rubbing his raw wrists. "Save the flirting for when we're safely away," Nara replied, though her eyes lingered on him with unmistakable relief. "We've got 5 minutes before the backup systems restore full power. What's the plan?" Jonathan asked, accepting a small blaster Nar offered him. "'Cause chaos exposed Driok. Escape in the confusion," Nar summarized briskly. "Lice is going to help with the chaos part." The girl stepped forward, her small face set with determination. "I've been practicing. We can project emotions to everyone in this section of the fortress." "What emotion?" Riker asked, concerned for the strain this would put on her. Lissa's answer surprised him. "Courage. The courage to question, to resist." "Brilliant," Jonathan breathed. "The perfect weapon against the hegemony's control." They moved swiftly through darkened corridors, avoiding the confused guards scrambling to restore order. Nar led them to a central communication hub, where she quickly bypassed security protocols. "The data crystal," she instructed Riker. "It's time to show everyone what the hegemony has been hiding." As Riker inserted the crystal into the terminal, Nar's fingers danced across the controls, routing the data to every display screen in the fortress. Simultaneously, Lissa closed her eyes in concentration, her small body trembling with effort as she projected waves of courage and defiance throughout the complex. The effect was immediate and electric. The fortress erupted in chaos as the evidence of hegemony atrocities played on every screen, while Larissa's empathic projection broke through years of conditioned subservience. Workers turned on guards, merchants barricaded entrances, and even some lower-ranking hegemony officers stood down, affected by the wave of courage washing over them. "Time to go," Nar announced, supporting a weakened but triumphant Larissa. They were halfway to the South Docking Bay when Admiral Drelock intercepted them, flanked by his personal guard. His reptilian face was contorted with rage. "You've accomplished nothing," he snarled. "This fortress is insignificant. The hegemony spans galaxies. But now everyone knows what you did to Elysia," Arca replied calmly. "And to all the others." Thetran's mission went sector-wide. Droxdale lashed violently. "Then you'll die knowing you've doomed countless more worlds to destruction. The hegemony does not tolerate dissent. Neither do humans," Jonathan said, stepping forward. What happened next unfolded with stunning speed. As Drelock raised his weapon, Lissa, drawing on reserves of strength none of them knew she possessed, projected a focused wave of pure terror directly at the Admiral and his guards. The aliens froze, paralyzed by primal fear, giving Arca and Jonathan the opening they needed to disarm and subdue them. "That's for my people," Lissa whispered as Drelock was secured. 3 days later, Riker stood on the bridge of Nara's sleek coalition vessel, watching the stars streak by as they traveled a hyper's speed away from Trax's prime. The hyperdrive modulator hummed efficiently, a parting gift from a grateful Plex, who'd emerged as an unlikely leader in the fortress's new provisional government. Admiral Drelock was in the ship's brig, bound for coalition space, where he would stand trial for war crimes. The data crystal's evidence, combined with his own captured testimony, would deal a significant blow to hegemony operations throughout the sector. Jonathan had chosen to remain behind, helping organize the diverse species of the fortress into a cohesive resistance. Humans are good at bringing people together, he'd explained with a wink. It's what scares the hegemony most about us. Warm arms encircled Riker from behind, and he leaned back into Na's embrace. Credit for your thoughts, she murmured against his ear. Just thinking about how buying a slave girl's freedom somehow led to all this, he replied, turning to face her. The privacy of the bridge allowed her to wear her hair loose, cascading over her shoulders in a way that still took his breath away. One act of compassion, she agreed, her amber eyes soft with admiration. The hegemony never understood that's humanity's truest strength. Not your technology or your numbers, but your capacity for empathy across species lines. Speaking of which, Riker glanced toward the crew quarters where Lissa was resting, still recovering from her empathic exertions. What happens to her now? There's an Elysian refugee community on Proxima Colony, Nara said, but she hesitated, suddenly uncharacteristically shy. I was thinking perhaps we could offer her something else, a family. The implications sent warmth spreading through Riker's chest. Are you proposing something, Agent K? Perhaps. Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. The Coalition could use someone with your unique human perspective, and I could use a partner who reminds me what we're fighting for. And Larissa gets 2 parents instead of 1, Riker added, pulling Na closer. Is that a yes? Her lips hovered tantalizingly close to his. That's a hell yes. He replied before closing the distance between them, later as they lay together in the captain's quarters. The ship carrying them toward a future neither could have imagined days earlier. Riker reflected on the strange path that had led him here. A broken hyperdrive, a slave girl's plea, a moment of compassion that had changed everything. No regrets? Nar asked sleepily, her head pillowed on his chest. Only that I didn't meet you sooner, he replied, stroking her hair. In the adjacent cabin, Lissa slept peacefully for the first time since her world's destruction. No longer a slave, but a child with a future, protected by the most unlikely family in the galaxy. A family forged by one human's refusal to walk past suffering, even when it would have been easier to look.